The tavern's always open.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Have you noticed that Hollywood has been getting a little bit more and more woke? And have you noticed that backlash against big tech, support against big tech has been growing? Well, today's video is going to combine both of those topics. Roger Waters, a man who wrote most of the Pink Floyd hits, including A Brick on the Wall, just blasted Mark Zuckerberg openly on record for millions to see. The tech tyrant's time is running out as it becomes something more bipartisan, and that's really what I want to focus on for this video, because Roger Waters himself is a lefty, and some would even say a far lefty, part of the BDS movement, definitely not a Trump supporter by any means, not even close to a Republican, probably not even really that close to the center. But one thing that's definitely becoming more bipartisan, and I mean hopefully it's about time, is the condemnation of big tech companies and really just how evil they are in nature. And so that's what I want to talk about, how of course we have a common enemy, and then the level of cognitive dissonance with all of these lefties who align themselves with multi-billionaires and major corporations, acting in fascistic manners as they talk about fascism and bashing the fash. Let's talk about the irony. Let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg getting BTFO'd. And I got some other topics that I want to mention as well. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so here's the headline piece from the Gateway Pundit. Roger Waters says he told Mark Zuckerberg to F off when he asked to use another brick in the wall, an Instagram ad. Roger Waters told the crowd at a recent Free Assange event that he told Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg to F off when the big tech giant asked to use Pink Floyd's song in an ad for Instagram. Waters is a long-time and outspoken supporter of Assange and press freedom. According to the iconic musician, Zuckerberg offered a huge amount of money to use the 1979 Pink Floyd classic, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2.
It's a missive from Mark Zuckerberg to me, right, arrived this morning with an offer of a huge amount of money, and the answer is F you. No f***ing way.
He went on to say what is truly based and accurate. I only mention that because this is an insidious movement to take over absolutely everything, he continued. I will not be party to this BS. Mark Zuckerberg. Waters also read from the letter that he says he received from Facebook. We want to thank you for considering this project, he read. We feel that the core sentiment of this song is still so prevalent and so necessary today, which speaks to how timeless the work is. And yet, they want to use it to make Facebook and Instagram more powerful than it already is, he replied, so that it can continue to censor all of us in this room and prevent this story of Julian Assange getting out in the general public so the general public can go, what? No more. And so as I stated earlier, I may not be on the same political side as Roger Waters, not even close, but at least he's speaking for freedom of expression, which is something that seemingly doesn't exist on the left side of politics anymore. There are very few individuals on the left fighting against tech tyranny. The level of cognitive dissonance and hypocrisy on the left side of politics, where they've essentially sided with fascistic tech oligarchies in order to pursue their political ambitions, shows you exactly what's wrong with the modern left today. They wear shirts like tax the rich, eat the rich. They call the Republican Party the party of corporate interests while embracing Silicon Valley and their corporate predatory tactics. They talk about capitalism and the evils of capitalism as they support companies that outsource cheap labor, that try to create monopolies, buying out any type of competitor in their way, completely decimating competition, making it so that they're the only people in the sphere, just like Google and Facebook, control nearly 100% of the ad market online, Amazon buying out competitors, or just having the ability to literally lose money to offer prices that are so much cheaper than your average retailer or small business that they essentially put them out of business. And then on top of that, an added level of hypocrisy. Not only are they siding with probably the most staunch capitalist vultures, they talk about fascism while supporting tech companies and their crackdown on free speech, freedom of expression, and open political dialogue, embracing both sides of the political spectrum. And very few people on the left side of politics even speak openly about it. Bill Maher says it's outrageous that Facebook, Google suppress lab leak theory. You were wrong, Google and Facebook. He also said liberals don't want to say anything about China's abuses because they think it's racist. They're so easily manipulated. Political posturing and political virtue signaling is really all big tech companies in China rely on to get naive latte Twitter liberals to do their bidding, to promote false talking points, to encourage authoritarian censorship of ideas. Over and over over and over again, these massive tech companies get it wrong. They suppress stories based on phony fact-checking that end up being true, and it always goes one way. You know, big tech has enabled the era of fake news and misinformation and disinformation. That's absolutely true. And these big tech companies create this narrative as if it's their job to do the right thing and combat misinformation, but they only ever seem to go after the right. They promote left-wing conspiracy theories while banning people from even being able to talk about anything on the right side of politics. There's a bunch of video topics I'd love to make on this YouTube channel, but I just cannot. There's massive news, ideas, just discussion, maybe even from a neutral perspective to get an idea of what the argument is when it comes to certain right-wing theories, and we just can't even talk about them because Google would destroy everything that I've worked so hard to build. And liberals promote this as if it's something that's healthy and good for society. It's absolutely twisted is what it is. Liberals have free reign to say any idiotic statement they want, any crazy kooky theory they want, and get away with it. Right-wingers aren't given the same privilege. My apologies, but my perspective is that regardless of how dumb your theory may be, regardless of how crazy it may be, even though a lot of them end up being true, you have the right to be a dumbass. You have the right to have whatever perspective you may want, to believe in whatever theory you may want, without Mark Zuckerberg or Susan Wojcicki or any other big tech CEO coming after your livelihood, because that's really what it is. They have a complete monopoly, a complete control over the ad market, and when people like me are in the mode of self-preservation, which we really don't have a choice, it's financial pressure. My specific pressure is I'm getting at the point in my life where I'm trying to start a family, and the last thing that I need is for Google to pull the rug from under my feet and to destroy everything I've built and everything that I'm building for the future of my family. And that's textbook fascism, and that's exactly what the left is enabling. That's exactly the side that they're on when they side with these massive corporations and cheer on censorship of ideas that they disagree with or that aren't politically expedient to their causes. They cheer on when it benefits them, they cry like a bunch of little babies when it doesn't, which is a very large distinction between the right and the left. Right-wingers, for the most part, don't want people to get banned for ideas. Woke backlash and people losing their job because they deserve it, that's one thing. Or people going out of business because their ideas suck and they push concepts and narratives that are alienating 50% of the country. That's different. That's the free market of ideas. Massive tech corporations and tech CEOs that attack people's livelihoods or deplatform people based on ideas. That's something that Republicans will never support. Left-wingers, however, don't provide right-wingers with the same courtesy. They cheer it on and frankly, they enable it. If there was the same political backlash from left-wingers when it comes to right-wingers being censored and deplatformed, it wouldn't happen. But that backlash doesn't exist. They'd rather let you drown and side with the Mark Zuckerbergs and Susan Wojcickis and Jack Dorseys of the world as they travel the path of least resistance and prove themselves to be leftist authoritarians. But maybe things are changing, and that's the whole point of this video, as we see more and more lefties start to go after big tech, like Bill Maher and Roger Waters. Maybe the tide is turning, maybe the pendulum is swinging, and maybe we have the numbers to back it up as well. Poll: Feds, big tech have too much power. 69% do not believe social media is fair. The latest in a series of nationwide polls shows that people's distrust in big government and media institutions has eroded even further since 2019. And while trust in big tech companies and government is at an all-time low, it's eroded. I'm having the opposite reaction when it comes to the actual people, as it seems they're waking up on a daily basis to the tunes of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people taking the red pill. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit more faith in humanity after all. The media and social media, I will continue to say, are the most evil forces in Western society and in global society in the current day. They are the fascists. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, with the Joe Biden presidency, I think most people expected Joe to just collapse. And while he's certainly not performing, and I'd say that's putting it nicely, it's been a complete disaster. Joe Biden hasn't got a single win. A total lame duck president who hasn't accomplished anything other than actively betraying the voter bloc that put him in the position in the first place. The fact of the matter is that Joe hasn't collapsed. His approval rating is going down, enthusiasm is as low as it could possibly possibly be. Biden voter regret is through the roof. It's not a total collapse. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, this is probably one of the most spectacular political downfalls I've ever seen in my life. She is done. They had high hopes for her, especially the radical lefties on Twitter. She was going to be the queen of the Oval Office. Eventually, she was going to be the president, either in 2022 or 2024. She was the progressive future for the Democrats. As much as a political train wreck that I honestly thought she was even before the election, she helped Joe Biden reach out to the more radical Bernie Sanders voters and people who vote based on identity politics. She helped Joe get across the finish line, absolutely. But now it seems as though she's taking Joe down and ensuring that she will remain as unelectable as you can possibly be in a general election sense. It is a total disaster. And so that's really what we got to focus on for this video. Well, our trip to the southern border now is looking like it's equally, or if not more of a disaster, as the walls continue to cave in on Kamala Harris's political ambitions. Let me show you guys exactly what I'm talking about, but before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. So just as I hinted in the intro, Kamala Harris was brought onto the Biden ticket for one specific reason. It was to pander to cater to minority woke voters. But see, things are a little bit different nowadays in politics, as the African American community, and probably more impressively than all, the Latino community, specifically those from Cuba, Venezuela, and other communist countries, are walking away from the Democrats for good. And nowhere is this happening at the same level as it is in Texas. In McAllen, Texas, of course, we covered not too long ago, a city where the demographic is 85% Latino, just voted for a Republican mayor. Well, Kamala Harris, who's supposed to be the minority ambassador for the Democrat White House, landed in Texas, and let's just say she wasn't exactly greeted as the queen of all Latinx voters, as the Democrats wish in their identity-driven political view. People of all political stripes show up at El Paso to protest Kamala Harris's handling of the border crisis. Both pro-Trump and pro-immigration protesters showed up in El Paso, Texas to protest against Vice President Kamala Harris's handling of the ongoing crisis situation at the US border. Just check this out. Everywhere Kamala Harris shows up, it turns out into a protest, attacking her, attacking Joe, making them look like absolute monumental fools.
I've said I'm going to the border. It's just a little cringeworthy.
Biden can't get a win. Kamala Harris is getting a record amount of big fat L's. L after L after L. It's been a total train wreck. It's been so bad that even partisan left-wing outlets are accurately reporting just how bad Kamala Harris has been as the borders are. She was tasked with a duty, and for nearly 100 days she neglected that duty. There's reports coming out that she was apparently furious that Joe Biden dumped the border on her, which just goes to show what type of character that she really is. She didn't view it as a challenge, something that may be difficult politically, but she'll take on head on and try to make the best of it. She whined, she complained, she avoided her responsibility. And honestly, mostly probably just to save her political brand. She's supposed to pander to left wokies. Well, if she starts handling the border and talking about border security and pushing for legal immigration and disincentivizing illegal immigration, well, it's probably gonna backfire. And it just goes to show exactly how disingenuous these Democrats are, especially Kamala Harris. But the disaster continues. It's much worse than you might have actually expected. 2 Kamala Harris staffers in charge of planning travel resign amid disastrous border trips. CNN and every other left-wing outlet is turning on Kamala Harris, essentially calling her an abject failure in her role. American voters, based on polling data, are also turning on Kamala Harris. Everywhere she lands, she gets protested, and now her own staffers, her own aides, who were in charge of her border trip to El Paso, are resigning. This, my friends, is what I mean where everything around Kamala Harris is collapsing. The wheels are falling off, the rusted doors on a rust bucket are falling off, the engine's nearly on fire, and her passengers are just jumping ship as Kamala Harris drives forward head-on into political disaster. But it gets even worse. The one topic of conversation that people have been focused on now is that Kamala Harris's trip was to El Paso. Here's a map to really put things into perspective. The Rio Grande Valley, south of San Antonio, Texas, at the southern peak of the state, is where the true epidemic is happening. The Rio Grande Valley experiencing 230% more crossings this year. The graphic that I showed you guys just the other day, here's the difference quantifiably. Kamala Harris visited El Paso, which is at the intersection of New Mexico, Mexico, and Texas, and it's 800 100 miles away from the actual core of the issue. You gotta be a seriously disingenuous Democrat to call out Donald Trump for years over his photo ops and then do something like this. Kamala Harris ignoring her duties for months to visit the actual source of the issue that her entire job is to ameliorate, finally planning a trip but not visiting the core of the epidemic whatsoever, ignoring it, going to El Paso instead to deceive voters in a clearly politically motivated decision to avoid the actual epicenter of the issue. It's absolutely despicable, and it shows exactly how calculated and how disingenuous these Democrats are. But wait, it gets worse. Jen Psaki now comes into the equation, and automatically, when I say that name, you know that when I say it gets worse, it really does. Jen Psaki was questioned about why Kamala Harris decided to go to El Paso instead of the Rio Grande Valley, and here's what she had to say.
How did the Vice President choose El Paso as the location for her first trip to the border as Vice President?
It's a great question. I was interested in that as well, so we looked into it. I would say that El Paso has an interesting history, as you may know, because it was the place where the former president it was a base place of where he put in place some of his immigration policies that we felt were so problematic. And so it's a place that has a little bit of historical connection in that regard, and it's an opportunity to draw a bit of a contrast with what we're trying to accomplish.
Can you give us any details about the three?
You have got to be kidding me. Kamala Harris's job is to fix what her and Joe Biden started, but instead, she's only going to go to the southern border after Donald Trump announced that he was going to go to the southern border. By the way, he's actually going to the Rio Grande Valley, where kids are regularly drowning trying to cross over the border during the treacherous trek. So Kamala's essentially only going because Trump is going and they want to combat or get there before he does. And then she goes to El Paso specifically so that she could blame things on Trump, make it all about Trump when he's not even the president anymore, but he's living rent-free in their minds so badly that they're going to make the trip about Trump instead of the actual people suffering, instead of actually doing their job, instead of the American people and border safety or public safety for people who live on the border and border towns in general. This is the most despicable, disingenuous, politically motivated, partisan White Houses of all time. They went to El Paso not to fix the problem, just so they can slander Donald Trump about their ridiculous kids in cages narrative, which is, by the way, much worse on their watch. In fact, it's 4 times as worse, and the conditions are worse. But in order to distract from their clear and objective failures, they're gonna bring back the whole orange man bad, kids in cages narrative, and they're trying to use Kamala Harris's border visit in order to talk about Trump instead of talking about solutions. Absolutely despicable, and I don't see how a single person can stand by Kamala Harris. I mean, for Pete's sakes, it seems as though the White House is trying to run from her as well, and if that doesn't tell you exactly what you need to know, nothing will. They might be part of the vote blue no matter who crowd, but it's just absolutely disgusting, and hopefully I made that clear in this video. But if you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Why do Democrats avoid debate and discussion as if it's the plague? Same way they act with the COVID-19, masked up, locked away in their own isolated prison, 6 feet apart. That's exactly how Democrats act around debate, and it's because most of their claims are so easily disproven. When the entire premise of your ideology is based off of emotion and fantasy rather than data, logic, and reality, well, it's better to prance around and pretend like you're a better person instead of actually getting into a genuine dialogue. And where the Democrats have been so disingenuous as of late is on the discussion surrounding CRT, or critical race theory. At this point, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what CRT is. Now, like most left-wing arguments, the claim continues to evolve. Right now, we're at the evolutionary stage of Democrats backing away, pretending as if it doesn't exist, it doesn't happen. Critical theory is only in law school. As Joy Reid said, it's not taught in K through 12. It doesn't even exist exist in the classroom outside of legal theory. But is that true? Wait, don't answer that question. Let me do it for you. No, it's a whole load of BS. As critical race theory, at least the major tenets of critical race theory and other tangent philosophies have permeated every single level of academia, and not only academia, but culture, HR departments, corporations, local and federal government. And when Democrats tell you that your kids are not being taught CRT by American-hating, self-loathing liberals, they are lying. And let me prove it to you by showing you that teachers themselves, who may be even teaching your children, are debunking the leftist narrative. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so the lefty argument, once again debunked by their own kind. Video, teacher goes viral for complaining that she can't teach CRT and is required to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh no, the horror. But just take a look.
Today is the first time our country has recognized Juneteenth. It's a national holiday, and yet I'm getting ready to go back to school in the fall, and my governor has put into place some ridiculous legislation that many governors across the country have put into place, such as I can't teach anything divisive, I can't teach critical race theory, and I can't teach about racial equity. This is at all public schools, colleges, and universities. So, teachers, in the past, we've been activists. After the show of last year, we really need to stand up and do what's right for our kids right now.
But wait, I thought K through 12 teachers weren't teaching critical race theory. And she mentions, we've been activists, and we gotta do what's right for our children, not your children. She takes it almost as possessive, as if it's her children. The parents themselves are asking, please don't do this to my children. But the teacher, her perspective is what's right, and she's gonna indoctrinate your children, essentially proving the claims that we have made about early academia, liberal indoctrination, and turning your kids into activists instead of just teaching them real life skills. I mean, some of these teachers are absolutely insufferable. Of course, where does all this stuff come from? It's all about white guilt, it's America hating, but more importantly, it seems as though it's almost selfish. Take a look at this.
Let me tell you a little bit about the population of my school. 51% of my students are Latinx, and many of them are undocumented, and many more have parents who are undocumented. So when they come into my classroom and see signs that say no human is illegal, they don't need to know who I voted for. I don't need to tell them. When my black students come into my classroom and see my Black Lives Matter posters, I don't need to tell them. When my LGBTQ plus students come in and see my pride flag, I don't need to tell them. Because they know that I have used my critical thinking skills and have decided to vote for whoever is on the side of fighting for human rights. So no, I don't need to tell them. Because they know that I am using the privilege I was born with to fight for them. That I am an ally for them. So yeah, that's not political, that's human rights.
It's all about me, 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 me. I'm an ally, I'm such a good person, and only one concept comes to mind, the white savior complex. Well, another thing comes to mind.
Hide your kids.
Stop indoctrinating children, it's that simple. Stop teaching kids about equity. Equity is Marxism. Parents have the right to not want their kids to be turned into communist ideologues. Stop teaching children to hate their country and to hate themselves. But this is what these teachers are doing, check this out.
The other thing that my governor has mandated for next year is that every classroom, it's mandatory that we all have an American flag, and it is mandatory that we all do the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. You're going to be hearing from me a lot next year.
Imagine being part of one of the greatest social experiments of all time, which is what the American flag represents. A flag that fought for freedom, fought communism, fought fascism, tyranny, fought for human rights and abolition. Imagine being so woke, which is ironic what I mean to say. It's paradoxical, so woke means really so blind. Imagine being so woke blind that you're ashamed of the American flag and to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Isn't that what you're trying to focus on? Liberty and justice for all? A little bit paradoxical, a little bit backwards, considering you're more focused on equity and injustice and pushing ideas that have led to tyranny over and over again in history, while condemning the flag that stands for everything that you claim to be for. There's an epidemic of unqualified individuals educating the next generation. I used to think that homeschooling was just something that like hippie parents would do to take their kids out of the system, but honestly, the older I get, the more I think it's a good idea. This stuff is absolutely crazy, and it's having a serious effect. Most liberal college students are not proud Americans and support socialism, survey says. While conservatives are pushing patriotism and a Take Back America platform, those on the left have been moving in the opposite direction, with the inclusion of critical race theory training in school and government. A national survey of 1,000 college students released on June 17th has now measured the results of this. More than 400,000 students participated, and the results showed 57% of left-leaning respondents were not proud to be Americans. This is in contrast to 73% of conservatives who answered that they were. Other statistics include 81% of liberals said their views of America were developed in college compared to 44% of conservatives. Let's do a little bit of a flashback on that one.
I mean, like, I didn't really think of it in this way until I got to college, and like I took women's and gender studies classes, and that put me on this path where I'm like, yeah, like, yes.
So you took the gender studies classes and you had this kind of revelation?
Yeah, exactly.
That's almost data that proves that these are liberal indoctrination facilities rather than academic institutions. 47% of liberals were favorable to socialism, and only 13% were negative towards it. 65% of liberals thought socialism could solve major problems, such as climate change and poverty. 45% of all respondents said that a few professors had expressed their viewpoints on socialism and capitalism. It's not hyperbole, it's not me being facetious when I say that these are liberal indoctrination facilities. They are teaching your kids from a very young age to make decisions about themselves and others around them based on the color of their skin, the opposite of what Martin Luther King fought for. They are teaching your kids to hate their own country and to focus on all of the negatives instead of the incredible triumph. That's what the 1619 Project is all about. The curriculum in some cases has even become anti-white. Look at this right over here. Penn State professor of sociology states white people are dumb in defense of Coca-Cola's Be Less White training.
White people have been like, we're oppressors,
yes,
you know, arrogant, really confident or certain, defensive, and dumb. Like, white people are dumb.
You're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year to go to institutions of higher education to be taught Looney Tune concepts that create more division in society instead of being taught how to be a productive member of society. Tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars down the drain or accumulated in debt. For what? To sip Starbucks lattes, plunging yourself further and further into personal financial crisis, further debt, sending out pseudo-intellectual tweets out into the world, pretending as if you're actually doing something to ameliorate society. This person identifies themselves as a bioethicist and SJD candidate at U of T. This is what liberals are focused on, folks. Real important stuff. This is what tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt gets you. Gendering animals serves to normalize bioessentialist conceptions of gender. When we gender animals, we forget that sex is assigned. We begin to believe that sex is literally in the body. And so I guess my response is, maybe all along, Alex Jones was right.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that?
But all jokes aside, there's such an academic focus on all of this nonsense that your kids are getting swept into. And the further we go down this rabbit hole, the more opportunity and the further countries like China will have to get ahead of us. And so a wise individual once said,
Hide your kids.
And I know that once I become a father, I'm going to be doing some serious vetting of every academic institution my kid steps foot in, because this stuff is out of control. That's what I got for you though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. I gotta get back to work. I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I'm gonna say something here that probably a lot of you guys, you might cringe initially, but just give me a little bit of a second here to explain exactly what I mean. I like liberals. Oh, but Hivemind, haven't you made hundreds of videos debunking the liberal hypocrisy, or the hypocrisy of the left, rather? Isn't your channel called Liberal Hivemind? The metaphor that the left side of politics is just a hive, a cult, all ascribing to the same ridiculous dogma? Yeah, but I've made the distinction between a liberal and an illiberal leftist, a leftist authoritarian. And even though they're very rare nowadays, I mean almost extinct, real liberals still exist. Most people in my family would probably fit that category. And the beautiful part about actual liberals is that you can have a real conversation with them. They live in reality. If the Democrat Party, or leftism in general in the modern day of politics, was represented by actual liberals, for the most part Republicans and liberals would be able to meet in the middle and get bipartisan agreements on things, meet in the middle and actually pass some serious legislation that does good for the country. Lefties are nuts, but liberals, you know, they have some pretty good ideas every now and then. And the beautiful thing about real liberals, who are being honest, is they know that Joe Biden is out of his damn mind. The vote blue no matter who crowd is pretending as if Joe Biden is saving the country, the greatest president in American history, as they lie to everyone on their Twitter feed and of course lie to themselves. But real honest liberals, more moderate individuals, many of which probably are, I guess, identifying as Republicans nowadays, or at least voted Republican down ballot, they can admit the truth. And Joe Rogan is one of those individuals. While I don't agree with most of his political takes, when it comes to cultural wokeism, cultural Marxism, or I guess we could just call it cultural Marxism, at least he's willing to tell the truth, and this time he did. The most obvious truth, the elephant in the room, that Joe Biden's brain is melting. And so once again, folks, let's focus on the Biden gaffes that the media refuses to cover. Joe Biden's out to lunch, and his mind is seemingly deteriorating in front of our eyes as the media pretends it's not happening. We've got a lot to get into. It's been a couple of gaff-filled days, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. We need more discussion like this, folks. We need more real people telling the truth. That's exactly what Joe Rogan did in his most recent segment. Watch, Joe Rogan slams Joe Biden. We don't really have a leader in this country anymore.
Well, we're unhinged.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and we're not anchored down by a real leader. You know, we don't really have a real leader anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say Joe Biden is the president, he's our leader, and you'd be correct on paper, but I mean, everybody knows he's out of his mind. He's barely hanging in there.
And what a breath of fresh air that really is. Hollywood has become so morally bankrupt, so corrupt, so tied in with the Democrat establishment that they sit in front of you talking about taxing the rich, talk about social programs, as they have entire teams of accountants and tax lawyers, a whole myriad of schemes and setups in order to avoid paying as much taxes as humanly possible. They are hypocrites. They lecture you on #MeToo while cozying up with Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. They say believe all women, unless it's Tara Reid with a seriously credible accusation targeting their boy Joe Biden. Those are not liberals, folks. Those are leftists. And even beyond that, those are corporatist, bought and paid for establishment shills that do the bidding of their corporate overlords, their corporate masters. Rather, Joe Rogan is absolutely correct here. The president of the United States of America, folks, historically, whether left or right, have been highly competent individuals. Individuals with very high IQs, some of which are quantified at well above 130, sometimes in the 140 range. People who united and represented the country well on the world stage. And now we got this guy.
If it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway. You know, the rapidly rising I don't know.
And everything is not okay. No matter how many times Jen Psaki tells you that everything's under control, it's really not. Even with Joe Biden, who seems to be treated almost as if he's a canine with a metaphorical leash. He moves towards the press and they yank him back just to retreat him into his cage like a good boy, hidden in the basement of the Oval Office. It's still gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe. It never ends. It's literally never ending. Just this week, a horrible tragedy happened in Surfside, Miami, where where a condo building that was built in the 1980s fell down to the ground. What was left was just ruins and rubble. Joe Biden had a press conference where that was probably the most important thing that he was briefed on that he had to address in front of the American people. Joe Biden, a massive tragedy just happened in Florida. You got to go in front of the American people and say something about it. There's potentially hundreds of people who lost their lives here, and we need to be involved. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to get our messaging straight. Joe Biden says, "All right, Chief," goes to the podium and forgets entirely. Just check this out.
Will you travel to Florida, sir? Can we ask you about Florida, what you've learned and what
Oh, yes, I apologize. Yes, thank you, my President.
Kamala Harris had to stop him halfway through to remind him of the most important part of his press conference speech. Kamala Harris had to stop him as he was leaving the podium, looking like a caretaker working with the elderly, telling him to get back on the podium because he forgot the most important thing. I mean, as much as I dislike Kamala Harris, probably one of my most disliked politicians, I'd say, ever, you gotta admit she's probably seething. At least she's all there cognitively, and she's working behind the shadows of this guy who just can't get a single thing straight. Knowing her and her ambitions of power, she's probably in a constant state, a perpetual state of jealousy and anger, internally thinking, I should be there, I should be the president. Well, looking at how things are going, it seems as though that might be the case. This guy is lost, he's out to lunch, as the saying goes. The guy's an absolute creep. I mean, what a weirdo. Just look at this little awkward encounter he had with the press corps.
Guess what? Employers can't find workers. I said, yeah, pay them more. This is an employee's bargaining chip now. What's happening?
What is that? Talk about a creep, like I just said. Not to mention, people aren't going to work because they're being paid to just stay home by the federal government and by local governments as well. It's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Democrats' fault for endlessly just printing money and handing away free money to people who don't want to work, while of course simultaneously creating an inflation crisis. Just pay people more, bigot. Sure, that's how the economy works, right? It's not that you're running with profit margins and massive chain corporations and franchises who are running extremely competitive prices, which limits the amount that you can charge and you can make for selling your product. And you can only profitably run your business by paying people what you can pay them. Just pay them more. The Democrat president says this guy is out of his mind. Every time they put him in front of a microphone, it's a complete disaster. Here he is implying that all Latinx people are undocumented.
People have memories. People have long memories. It's awful hard as well to get Latinx vaccinated as well. Why? They're worried that they'll be vaccinated and deported.
You know what, as I stated earlier with the dynamic between Kamala Harris, who still has her mind intact, it's not like she's any better when it comes to public messaging and public relations now, is it? Considering her absolute blunder of a southern border trip. There's probably two things that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have in common. Awful public relations skills. They both look like absolute buffoons on a near daily basis every time they get in front of a microphone. And secondly, they can't stop lying. Joe Biden's entire career is built off lying. Kamala Harris seemingly trying to follow suit. She's the border czar, and recently Donald Trump has been putting her on blast. Well, here she is, once again, blaming the border crisis, which everyone has blamed on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Well, she's blaming it on Donald Trump again.
And as you know, we inherited a tough situation. In fact, right here in El Paso was the launch of the child separation policy. You saw it as it rolled out on the ground in real time. We have looked at a system where people have been housed in inhumane conditions over the last many years. An asylum system that has been broken and that needs to be reconstructed. And in 5 months, we've made progress. But there's still much more work to be done, but we've made progress.
We've inherited a tough situation. In 5 months, we've made progress. In 5 months, you've made progress? You inherited a tough situation? They inherited a relatively lax border. Relatively speaking, their political rhetoric caused a border crisis, which they haven't made progress in 5 months, which blew up over the 5 months of their presidency. It does not get any more disingenuous than this. Just look at this graphic right over here. 220 50,000 border encounters in 2021 just in the Rio Grande Valley, 85.2 thousand in El Paso. That's just in the state of Texas. These numbers are unprecedented. But of course, the White House will continue to deny reality, and they're just pushing the talking points that get pushed down from up all the way down. Jen Psaki yesterday said, "We've made tremendous progress." Kamala Harris is now saying, "Over the last 5 months, we've made amazing progress." DHS Secretary Mayorkas, same thing.
As everyone knows, we faced significant challenges back in March. We've made extraordinary progress. I look forward to sharing with the Vice President the progress we've made, the work that remains, and I look forward to the day.
We've made extraordinary progress. No, you haven't. Inflation is not seasonal, it's not transitory, it's not a good thing. Climate change did not cause the border crisis, it was not Donald Trump. You are not making progress, you are in over your head, and the American people can see it as clear as day. Joe Rogan is right. There's a serious lack of leadership and even cognitive ability inhabiting the White House. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.
For my wallet, I just wanted 3 things. It had to be simple, really easy to access your cards, and last forever. I'm BJ Minson. I'm the founder of Grip6. One day I realized after I had destroyed my credit card several times and my butt was hurting, like, why am I carrying this wallet in my back pocket? It was like a fit of minimalism where I was like, that's it, I'm done with it. I'm throwing away everything that I don't really need. And I got a broccoli rubber band, stuck it on a couple.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. This is what we call absolute partisan corruption. My friends, they went after Donald Trump for years, claiming that he was a wannabe autocrat using Bill Barr and federal power to attack the Constitution and democracy. Well, it turns out, just like usual, it's just projection from the Democrats as Joe Biden proves himself to be a constitutional and political arsonist who's now using the Justice Department to go after Republicans and more importantly, or probably more scary than anything else, to go after state sovereignty and the democratic rights of that state. This is one of the most despicable political attacks we have ever seen, and it's total desperation, but above all else, it's corruption. AG Merrick Garland came out today and said that the Biden administration, or the DOJ, which is of course the legal arm of the Biden administration, is suing the state of Georgia because of the perceived voter restrictions or voter suppression, which doesn't exist, and we've pointed that out a million times, going into the actual facts of the matter. And the hypocrisy, the corruption, the nonsense of it all is so out of this world crazy, it's not even funny. When I call Joe Biden a political arsonist, it's not even hyperbole. This is one of the most un-American, disgusting things I've ever seen, an abuse of power coming from the White House. And this would have never happened under the Trump administration. In fact, it's the exact thing that Democrats were always fear-mongering about, that Donald Trump would hypothetically do with Bill Barr alongside, which never happened, not with his Supreme Court picks, not with Bill Barr, but 150 days into Biden's administration, and he's doing exactly what Democrats were fearful of, except this time, instead of fear-mongering about it, they're cheering it on, as if it's some form of justice. Let's get into it, folks. But before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so check out the headline right over here. Biden administration sues Georgia over new voting laws. On Friday, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that the Biden administration's Justice Department is suing Georgia over the voting laws it passed earlier this year. The rights of all eligible citizens to vote are the central pillars of our democracy. Garland said in a news conference at the Justice Department they are the rights from which all other rights ultimately flow. And this idea or this claim that SB 202 stops eligible citizens from voting is a complete farce. In fact, it probably enforces that. But just check how ridiculous the actual stated reason why Attorney General Merrick Garland stated he's now going after Georgia for.
So on the first question, I want to give credit to the news media. There were a number of articles that collected all the threats and discussed them, putting them together in a way that I have to say, frankly, I had not seen before. And when I saw that significant number collected in that way, I realized quite clearly how important this was. Now, we had been going after these threats as they occurred.
Because of all the news media propaganda, he literally admits it. Because of the news media and their coverage, he's now pursuing going after the state of Georgia for SB 202. You have got to be kidding me. We've gone over every single element within the Georgia bill, as well as the Texas bill, so many different times, and debunked every single leftist talking point. They have absolutely no merit to stand on. It's not voter suppression, it's voter integrity. Voter ID is not voter suppression. Stopping activist groups coming out with material goods to hand to voters waiting in line and to try to persuade votes, stopping that is not voter suppression. There is no merit whatsoever, and the timing is probably what's most damning of all. The Republicans blocked S1, the blatant power grab from the Democrats, who feel as though if they cannot pass S1 or HR1 for the People Act, that they risk losing their majorities in 2022 and 2024 beyond. I mean, for Pete's sakes, Chuck Schumer said it himself.
So the biggest leverage we have is this is the right thing to do. But second, there's more leverage. Our caucus is going to know if we enact these laws, it makes the chances of us keeping the majority. If we fail to block these laws, the chances of our caucus retaining the majority and people who are up for re-election like Kelly and Warnock winning is greatly diminished.
As well as a Democrat operative who said it was all about retaining power as well.
To make sure we pass S1. Again, the American people have sent us here to deliver. If we deliver, we maintain power in 2022. If we don't and we show the inability to deliver, then we risk losing power and risk this moment in American history to really push a progressive democratic agenda.
And so we know the motive, we know the intent. The mission isn't to defend voting rights, it's not to protect the sanctity of democracy, it's to retain Democrat power. And all of a sudden, as SB 1 and abolishing the filibuster falls flat on its face in the Senate, AG Merrick Garland, in what seems to be a political witch hunt, comes out to sue the state of Georgia and the state legislature that has the right, their sovereign state right, to pass their own bills just like the federal government would through their House and their Senate. This is called political partisan strong-arming, an attack on states' rights and state sovereignty from a federal level for partisan reasons. Jen Psaki had a little bit of a Freudian slip when questioned on this exact topic.
Are you saying that the White House had no contact with the Justice Department about this decision to move forward in Georgia? Is the Justice Department completely independent on
No, I'm not. It's a priority to the president, and yes, of course we are allowed to know, but it is, I was not meaning to convey that, but it is a decision made by the Justice Department to move forward, but clearly a priority of the president to take action wherever we can in government to make it more accessible to vote for people across the country.
This isn't a pursuit of justice, it's Joe Biden's top priority, it's the Democrats' top priority, as they've been panicking that they're going to lose their majority. For the People Act falls flat on its face, the deadline for them to pass it to be in effect before primaries is by early August. No way that's happening. They're now attempting to use political pressure to try to intimidate Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin to help abolish the filibuster, which, I mean, come on, that's not going to happen either. And so if all else fails, use an arm of the federal government to strong-arm their way to victory. It's absolutely despicable, and it shows a constant trend. We had Obamagate, the phony dossier, everything that we've seen with the CIA, the NSA, the FISA courts, of course the FBI that's been at the forefront of all of it, and now just a continuation with that under Joe Biden's administration, using the Justice Department in a partisan legal witch hunt to do the bidding of Democrat interest and the Democrat establishment. It's absolutely despicable. It's honestly one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my entire life, or in my entire time following politics. And the hypocrisy of it all, RNC Research writes over here, Joe Biden and his Attorney General's lawsuit against Georgia's common sense election integrity law is pure politics. The law makes it easy to vote, but hard to cheat. And reminder, it is easier to vote in Georgia than in Democrat-run New York or Delaware. Absolutely accurate. If AG Merrick Garland wasn't pursuing political interests for the Democrat establishment, then wouldn't he go after the supposed voter suppression and voter restrictions in the state of New York and in the state of Delaware? Why is it that only Georgia and Arizona and Texas really matter to them? Or even outside of that, why is it only specifically the state of Georgia, considering that's the exact place where the Democrats have the greatest risk at losing the Senate? With Raphael Warnock and Kelly, Chuck Schumer said it best himself, like I just showed you that clip about a month ago.
So the biggest leverage we have is this is the right thing to do. But second, there's more leverage. Our caucus is going to know if we enact these laws, it makes the chances of us keeping the majority. If we fail to block these laws, the chances of our caucus retaining the majority and people who are up for re-election like Kelly and Warnock winning is greatly diminished.
If they do not stop election reform bills that are being passed through Republican legislatures, they risk losing their majority, and he specifically names Warnock. This isn't by accident. It's not an accident that they're targeting only the exact state that's at the core, the pinnacle of Democrats retaining their Senate majority, or their 51 split with Kamala Harris going into 2022. This is purposeful, it's corrupt, and it's political, and it's exactly what Democrats feared with Donald Trump's 3 scoops presidency. They claim Donald Trump appointed 3 people to the Supreme Court. He was appointing partisans, Trump loyalists who were going to do his bidding from the Supreme Court level. They were going to go after Roe v. Wade and Obamacare, etc., none of which they actually did. They claimed that Bill Barr was Donald Trump's enforcer, who was going to use the institution of the DOJ to go after Donald Trump's political opponents. Again, never really materialized, now did it? 160 days of Joe Biden's presidency, and they're attacking the state of Georgia so they can retain a Democrat majority in the federal government. This is absolutely corrupt, and if you are a Democrat, regardless of whether or not this fits your interest or your political side, if you are being honest and if you believe in the actual rule of law and doing things right, in the sanctity of what an actual democracy means, and as you tweeted about Donald Trump and his abuse of power over 4 years, and you can sit by and allow this to continue, then you are an absolute hypocrite, and nothing you say from now on out should be taken seriously ever again. The reality is the Democrats are panicking as you see more and more headlines like this. Democrats are running out of time. Voting rights advocates are scared that the White House isn't taking Republican threats to the ballot seriously enough. What they mean is, we're poised to lose in 2022 based on historical trends, data, and election integrity laws that are passing across the country, and if we don't do something about it quick, then our majority will no longer be a majority for very long. That's what they're scared of. That's why it's only targeting Georgia and not the Democrat stronghold of New York. And really, the only thing that I could think of right now, as the Democrats' push for total power continues, is a quote from Lindsey Graham during the Kavanaugh hearing from 2018, where he said this:
"Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it.
Y'all want power, God, I hope you never get it." Amen to that. And hopefully I did a good job in this video describing why this is so absolutely despicable. If you guys have anything to add, then leave it in the comment section. Of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I gotta get back to work. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It's been a while since we covered the Hamas caucus. It's been a while since we covered the squad. What is it with people on the far left side of politics where they just don't learn lessons? You know, when it comes to moderate Democrats, they'll sometimes side with the far left policies, even some of the most ridiculous ones, generally to pander or for some idealistic purpose. But once they realize that it's not working, it's backlashing, and it's gonna hurt them in the political sphere, they back away. They touched hot fire, got burnt, and backed off. The far left Democrats are so righteous, so self-righteous in their ideology, some may say even narcissistically so, that they just refuse to back down. How can you possibly still be talking about defunding the police or abolishing the police? How? Well, of course, the far left squad members, they're still doing exactly that. As the national conversation, especially going into the 2022 midterms, is almost solely focused on crime, and the actual Democrat establishment are trying as hard as they possibly can to move as far as humanly possible away from anything even remotely defund the police, or even remotely close to anything related to AOC and the rest of the Hamas caucus. The Hamas caucus continues to push these ridiculous ideas that have led to a crime spree the likes of which we've never seen since the 1990s. They just refuse to concede to secede any type of ground whatsoever, and it's exactly what you'd expect from these far lefties. Zero inability to be introspective whatsoever, to be honest with themselves, to look at the data, or to admit that they were wrong, even a little bit. So let's get into it, folks. Let me show you guys what Ayanna Pressley is saying. We'll get into some Looney Tune liberal policies. Then we gotta talk a little bit about AOC, because there's a funny story that's been surfacing. Before we get into any of it though, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers, and with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so like I told you, as the Democrats are panicking that the idea of defund the police, or even being connected to it whatsoever, is going to lose them the House in 2022, Ayanna Pressley has a little bit of a different perspective. Check this out.
So yes, I support a radical reimagining of community safety and public safety, which means reallocating and not further investing in a carceral state.
All right.
Especially, Don, when we have not yet ended qualified immunity.
Yeah.
So
she still supports defunding the police and reimagining public safety. You've already reimagined public safety. You've reimagined it to be less safe for the public. Talk about regressive rather than progressive. I mean, the total lack of compassion as people are dying on the streets. Mainly people from minority communities are dying. Far lefties in the Hamas caucus are still talking like this. It's interesting. You know, the Miami police chief recently said this.
Well, look, first of all, the defund the police means different things to different people. For some folks, it means abolishing the police. For some other folks, it means to cut the police. But for folks that need us the most, which is disproportionately communities of color, it means less safety for them.
And he's absolutely correct. For folks that need us the most, which is unfortunately communities of color, it means less safety for them. As Ayanna Pressley, AOC, and Ilhan Omar continue their attack on police officers and blaming the brunt of violence on them somehow, which is the most illogical thing you could possibly do, the actual community that they pretend to represent is pleading for them to stop. I mean, just look at this interview with a woman who lost her husband in New York City. He was randomly shot on the street and they stole his jewelry.
You see what's happening.
Yes.
In New York City. You never believed this could happen to your family. Never happened to Milton. Yet you know that right now we're seeing this rise in crime in cities across the country, in New York City. Why do you think it's happening?
I think many people are struggling due to COVID, due to unemployment rates. Even though we have jobs available, people don't want to work. They rather just collect unemployment. And I feel the government needs to put a stop to people making claims that have the ability to work. Go out and work for your money. Go out and work to buy your own things. Don't steal. And don't kill just to get those things. Work for them just like my husband did.
People from the actual community telling it like it is. They don't want the police defunded. They don't want a welfare state where people are dependent on the government to collect scraps, not work, and then go and commit crime with their off time. What is she blaming? She's blaming the exact policies that the Hamas caucus is constantly pushing. These far lefties have absolutely lost their minds. They want to abolish the police. They want to expand the welfare state, and even beyond that, after creating a dependent welfare class that's living in abject poverty at the poverty line, because I mean, for Pete's sakes, the government can basically just keep you afloat and nothing more. They're doing stuff like Portland police to no longer conduct traffic stops to make safety safer and more equitable. They want to legalize drug use and drug abuse, drug sales. They want to legalize petty crime, theft. They want to stop foot chases. They want to stop traffic stops in the city of Portland. And who do they think is going to suffer based on their policies? It's certainly not AOC living in her $1 million condo, driving her Tesla with private security. It's certainly not Nancy Pelosi living the same kind of life. It's idealistic to a point where it's just stupid. I try to stay away from just calling something objectively dumb unless it really calls for it, but these policies, especially all of them combined on top of each other, the compounding effect of being soft on crime, of creating a permanent underclass dependent on government, as well as some other factors, are exactly what led us to where we are in the first place. Democrats want to expand it. They want to make it worse. What do they think's gonna happen? Well, I mean, it doesn't take an Einstein to figure it out. Things are gonna get worse. And New Yorkers are fed up. I mean, we covered it. Over 40% of Black Americans in the New York mayoral election voted for an ex-police chief. In polling data, 43% of African Americans voting for Eric Adams, 22% of Latinos. By far the biggest minority vote split for any candidate. Now with the actual election done and most of the votes in, Eric Adams leading with 33% of the vote and a monumental lead over Maya Wiley, who is the defund the police candidate. People are fed up. The latte liberals, and more specifically, or probably more surprisingly or unsurprisingly depending on how you look at these things, or how informed you are on what latte liberalism really is. The majority of white liberals voted for Maya Wiley. Latte liberals, people who are probably not even necessarily living in these communities, voted to defund the police for the actual communities themselves. People living on streets that they view as not safe as people are being indiscriminately murdered on the streets, voted for Eric Adams to bring safety to their communities. The latte liberals who live in the fancy areas voted for Maya Wiley to defund the police in their neighborhoods. The actual vote breakdown speaks more than words ever could. And actually a sub-story here that's really hilarious. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was actually campaigning for Maya Wiley in the New York mayoral election. AOC skips out on congressional voting to campaign for Maya Wiley. The funniest part of all is just how disingenuous AOC was as she was doing this. AOC is MIA. Queens Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been skipping out on congressional votes, citing pandemic hardships, but has found time to campaign for progressive mayoral candidate Maya Wiley. I continue to be unable to physically attend proceedings in the House chamber due to the ongoing public health emergency, Ocasio-Cortez wrote to the House clerk in a June 14th letter, explaining that she has designated her colleague Representative Jamal Bowman as her proxy, able to vote on her behalf. So AOC claims that the COOF pandemic is way too surreal for her to do her job and be in Congress, be present in Washington to vote on bills. But what's she doing in the meantime? She's in New York trying to get the defund the police candidate across the finish line. Check out this picture right over here. A bunch of New York liberals, latte liberals, with Maya Wiley at a concert, fundraising, no masks, no social distancing, just a whole lot of selfie with the caption, NYC is back, y'all, and we've got the biggest selfie to prove it, Wiley said in the tweet pumping the fundraiser. AOC plugged it too. Sundays are great for early voting. Grab a coffee, find your poll site, and vote today. She claimed the crowd was 100% vaccinated. Well, you know what? Pretty sure Congress is as well, but you couldn't be there because you needed to be on the ground pushing to defund the police for communities that you don't even live in, that you don't even represent. Ever since she got to Washington, D.C., it's not like she's ever actually in the district that she's representing, listening to the people on the streets and what they actually want. And the results of this mayoral election pretty much prove that. Bunch of phonies, folks. They're just a bunch of phonies. They're self-righteous in their belief, self-righteous to a point where it's a serious vice. They are unable, unwilling to have discussions with other people, to listen to other voices, to meet in the middle, to concede a single point or secede ground whatsoever. It's my way or the highway, and they don't care about the chaos or the fallout that their ridiculous policies bring, as long as it makes them popular with the Twitter crowd. That's what I got for you though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching like usual, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. The fact of the matter is we are in a battle called the cultural war, as Joe Biden calls it, the battle for the soul of the nation. Whatever you want to call it, whatever nomenclature you want to use, the fact is there's a cultural battle going on. In a sense, a cultural civil war. And we're on the losing side. That's fact. If you're being honest with yourself, we're losing. It's a David versus Goliath story. We're the underdog. The Democrats have control of nearly every institution of culture out there. They have control over the education system, of course, which is probably the scariest fact of all. But just because we've been losing or we're on the losing side doesn't mean that we are actually losing. If you think about it, momentum is shifting. For Pete's sakes, Donald Trump got elected into office. But it seems as though, as I've said a million times, the pendulum is starting to swing. We're seeing a cultural shift away from the Looney Tune woke left, as people are fed up with wokeism and cancel culture in the cultural sphere. But the one place where we're making some serious ground is within the schooling system. CRT is getting BTFO'd, and there's absolutely no other way to describe it. In the culture war, it's all about online presence, it's all about pressure, discussion, memes, of course. A lot of meme veterans out there. But on the academic front, it's not about memes or any of that. It's about parents who are at the forefront of the battle, taking it to the school boards each and every single day. And so let's talk about the ongoing battle as parents continue to fight on the metaphorical front lines. And let's get into some of the victories that have been going on in the culture war from an academic perspective. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so you guys might have heard what happened in Loudoun, Virginia, where every single news outlet is trying to focus on the two parents who were arrested. Left-wing sources are trying to make it seem as if the two parents who were arrested were aggressive and assaulting and launching hateful rhetoric towards other people, and they were rightfully arrested. Right-wing sources are claiming that the First Amendment rights of those individuals were violated during a peaceful protest protest against CRT at the school board. I don't necessarily want to focus on either of that. What I want to show you guys is just the enthusiasm. The rest is a distraction. When is the last time you saw school board meetings with this many people and this many signs? Just take a look at some of these pictures. I cannot and will not be silenced. We the parents stand up. A whole group of mothers with the sign "We the parents stand up," fighting against CRT, Stand Up Virginia. A group started called PACT, Parents Against Critical Theory. This absolutely based women out the building moving in with a sign that says STEM, not CRT. I could not agree more. We the parents stand up. Stop teaching critical race theory to our kids. And you guys are starting to see the trend. This is the type of activism I've been talking about. In so many previous videos that I've recorded, I've stated specifically that the Democrats are better at activism. The Democrats are better at standing up for what they believe in. Republicans over generations have had this perspective of being more calm, relying on discourse and dialogue. But when all of that breaks down and when the Democrats are screeching like a bunch of banshees during their activism, it might be time to actually stand up. It might be time to start actual grassroots movements. We saw one in 2016, of course, with Donald Trump, which is the America First movement, and it seems as though it's continuing. That trend is continuing as more patriots get active in their activism. This is a good thing. Not only do we absolutely dominate the realm of memes, that's 100%, we also dominate the field of comedy. Liberals are inherently unfunny. They dominate the actual industry, but none of them are really funny, and all the best comics are starting to lash out against wokeism in general. The last part that we're seriously missing is activism, and the activism is seemingly working as it's activating a shift in momentum, the likes of which we've never seen before. 58% of Americans, combining Republicans, Democrats, and independents, are against CRT, strongly disapprove of it, which then leads to actual policy change. Australian Senate bans Marxist critical race theory from Aussie classrooms. And get ready for this one. After Governor Ron DeSantis banned CRT from the state of Florida, DeSantis signs education reform bill requiring students learn about the evils of communism. Now that's based. Need I remind you that technically being a communist to a certain extent is still illegal within America. Communist Control Act of 1954 makes it so that it's literally illegal to launch, be a member, or support a communist party of the United States. So it seems as though Ron DeSantis is just doing what's right and what's legal. People who aren't, however, are of course the cultural Marxists who seek to indoctrinate your children. Loudoun County School Board Chair accuses parents objecting to CRT of pushing dog whistle politics. The school board chair, Brenda Sheridan, said that opponents are engaging in racist dog whistles after refusing to back down from radical equity training. Equity training. They're literally teaching your kids Marxist ideology and concepts, the concept of equity rather than equal opportunity. They're teaching discrimination, and then they're saying that you're using racist dog whistles when you object to them. It's absolutely despicable. They've completely lost their minds. University of Oklahoma trains instructors to censor students in the classroom. Free speech does not apply. Authoritarian leftists